So that was quite the journey, and that's an 18-month journey. So you know, you don't need to hear me for 15 minutes at the end. I see there's 15 minutes or so. Why don't you guys come up? We'll have a little bit of a discussion. Maybe there's some questions here. We'll steal another 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe 2 people from each team just grab a seat, and then we'll hear. Is there any questions? Anything anybody wants to talk about in terms of how this project came to be, the struggles, those types of things? I'll start once you guys get up.
I'm going to ask Dr. Lisa Richardson to join us as well. I think there wants to be focused questions. Well, thanks everybody for hanging in.
You can, I think all the mics are on, so you can, if you're going to speak, just pick up the mics. So I was there for the first session when we went up, and I certainly, you guys did all the heavy lifting after that. So I just want you to share some of the challenges in terms of what transpired, certainly from the expectations and how you got to this place now. And we're almost there. We still have to build those modules, but what were the bigger challenges, Mickey? I'm going to start with my team, Mickey and Anna.
There's a lot of learnings. I think the challenges, you know, Darlene pointed to them a little bit as sort of the Western way of working and having an agenda and schedules and questions and, you know, wanting a clear idea of what we're walking into, and you're not going to get that. And that's okay, right? You have to trust your partners and go along for the ride. So a sense of humor that Darlene always likes to talk about. I would say having a sense of humor is definitely very helpful, and being humble for sure. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And then that's, you know, played out in terms of timelines on a bigger scale. So, you know, we are linked to an 18-month funding timeline. We break that down. We say we need this many months for, you know, relationship building and for, you know, planning, and we need this much time to go into community, and it's time works differently in community. And I think there needs to be more space to allow for that, because it's just a different way. I wouldn't say that it's like slower. It's an iterative process. There's always more to learn. No, like, you know, it didn't go according to our timeline. So one would say, oh, this is slower, but it's not. It's just non-linear, and we have to give, I think, funders and need to give time and space to let that happen organically. I know that's a big ask, but we need more time and more space, and perhaps more flexibility on how we spend that time and how we spend that money.
And so JF's crew at Health Canada put together a meeting, and they've done this with the various projects. So in the chronic pain space, they'll bring together, you know, 20 groups that are funded through SUAP and working on projects. So they brought together a group about 8, it was about 8 projects, I think, that were funded across the country. And what was interesting was that, you know, and you identified some of the other organizations that have been in this space for a while. We were clearly the new kids on the block, and we didn't have our partners at that time because we hadn't finished signing all of the documents that needed to be signed. But you keep saying that, you know, Lisa's team in particular, we wouldn't have been able to get there without their experience. And so, you know, Lisa, when you put out those documents about how you transform the system and what that culturally appropriate care looks like, I guess, you know, how do we continue to expand this work is the question, especially in the pain space.
Hello. Thanks, Hans. I think one of the things that's always been complex for me is having been trained in one model of biomedicine, and also understanding our Anishinaabe ways and culture, and from my mother's side, so being part Anishinaabe. And how do we create the space to allow those two ways to coexist? Not only in that encounter that we have with the patient who's in front of us, but how do we design a healthcare system, an education system, ways of doing research where we're able to hold both ways together. And we have not, within medicine, we have not allowed for Indigenous ways which will, as I always say, benefit all peoples. When you're living with a chronic condition, thinking about all of those different aspects of your care and what are the strengths that you bring in your daily practice will help all of us, everyone living with chronic disease. But the challenge has been, when we're in such a dominant system, how do we actually leverage that change and allow for these spaces that we're working in? Well, one of the things we wrote about in the WISE practices is we need more Indigenous peoples in healthcare. We need more Indigenous providers. We need community health workers. We need spaces for traditional healers and leaders in our hospital systems, in our clinic systems. And we need those people to be supported, to actually thrive, to have the time and space, and to be respected with their knowledge systems. And so we need to create structures that do that. So at the board level, at the leadership level, at the education level of providers, and then having pathways when you're walking into an institution like Toronto General or across the street, where an Indigenous person can access both forms of care. Because what played out in the research, most people wanting a combination, well, most of the regional health surveys, and you'll remember this from all the former surveys that communities have to participate in, the First Nation surveys, over 50% of people are wanting to access both. So we need to create a system where people can safely and securely have both forms of care.
Yeah, and I know, Jim, I see you have your mic in your hand, and Darlene touched on the health laws that you're creating in community. And so how does that look for, you know, the interaction? Are we then looking to bring these resources into community, or are you looking to say, these are those new governing health laws we have in community, and we create and fit? Do we fit into that, or is there, you know, a bi-directional approach here that it?
I think what we have to do is we have to acknowledge that there are other ways of doing things. I'll use the example of myself again. I was in a car accident in my early teens, and I've lived with pain for most of my life. It's gotten better, and it's been up and down over the years. And a number of years ago, my mother noticed that, my legs, my knees, I get to a point where I could barely walk. And she said to me, she said, well, there's a medicine man coming to the community next week. Why don't you go and see him? So I said, okay. So I went. And he was doing something behind my back. He was blowing a bone whistle. And I could hear wings flapping coming in the distance. And they come closer and closer, and they're getting louder and louder. And I could feel those wings flapping in the wind on the back of my neck. And the emotions I got there was something I've never experienced, and I've still never experienced it again, is that every emotion I had all at the same time. I wanted to cry, I wanted to laugh, I wanted to, it was amazing. So after he was done, he said to me, you will know tomorrow. And by the way, did you know you had a hole in your kidney? And I was kind of shocked, because after the ceremony, I asked my mom, did you tell him about that hole in my kidney? And she says, no, I never said nothing to him. So how did he know that? So there's something there in those traditional practices that we practice that we've got to combine with Western medicine, because there's things that we do and those traditional practices that can improve the lives instead of just disregarding them. Usually you tell a doctor the story and say, that's crap. But we live with this. We see these healers on a regular basis. We go to shaken tents and things like that, and all kinds of ceremonies that actually do benefit. Because when I woke up that next morning, I knew I was getting better. So I'd just like to state that what my friend here said is we've got to incorporate those practices in our everyday, with a holistic approach. With that again, miigwech.
And exactly, miigwech, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work. Thank you for all of you for delivering on this project. This was a big risk that was taken. We almost didn't get the money and the funding to do this project, and you guys have delivered in spades. And I can't wait to see those educational models for the healthcare providers. It's going to be a really big deal. So thank you, everyone. We're going to reconvene in 10 minutes. So go take your 10 minutes, and 3:20 we'll get rolling again.